Hello everyone and welcome to this first set of battles from the King of the Tomb Invitational. In this first 2v2 round, we're going to have a showdown between the Gobbo King, who's going to be playing the Wood Elves, and Janet on occasion as the Dwarves, and they're going to be facing off against Pharaoh of War, who's going to be playing the Tomb Kings, and Shetland Apache as Bretonnia. So for any of you guys that did miss the initial announcement, there will be a link in the comment section below that has the brackets and all the updates regarding the tournament, the rules, and all of the participants as well. So without further ado, guys, let's get this show on the road. So you can see over here a bit of an interesting composition. So when I first saw this composition on the declaration list, I really thought we were going to see a very heavy dwarf front line, but in reality it's relatively light. We have some dwarf warriors with great weapons here, and I think looks like the warriors of Dragonfire Pass in the middle, but a lot of the infantry corps coming from the Gobbo King and Janet is actually Wildwood Rangers. So we do have two groups of the Rangers here. We also have Big Daddy Durthu, so I was expecting Prey of Anathrama and 4 Way Watchers going to be sniping out constructs and big targets like this. They're throwing a bit of a curveball in the meta here. So they do have Durthu, and as far as spells, no spells on him, so just going to be using him as a beat stick. He does have the Sword of Daith, which is going to be pretty good. It looks like he also has a Branch Wraith with Earthblood, Melkoth Mystifying Miasma, and the Pendulum, I think, for the last ability. And it looks like Janet does have a Rune Lord for his Lord. On top of that, they do have a firing battery up here on the hill. So they got bolt throwers, they got 2 cannons. There's going to be a lot of fire coming into this Tomb King's army. So for Shetland Apache and Pharaoh of War, it looks like Shetland is going to be going with a huge Bretonnian cav force. So the Rohirrim are riding in thick here. So he's got Knight Errants. He does also, man, that's a ton of Knight Errants. He's got a couple Grail Guardians, and I think on the far side he has more Grail Guardians. So just going with a very heavy, atrocious kind of grinding style of play. On top of that, Pharaoh on the main line does have Tomb Guards. He's got a couple Tomb Scorpions, Ushapti, and for some reason they're throwing the Grail Reliquaries in here. So that will buff the leadership, leading to them, crumbling a little bit slower, but definitely some wild stuff going on. As far as leadership goes, I think we do have Setra the Imperishable for the Tomb Kings and the Fey Enchantress. So in the front, you can see the Ushapti are going to be slamming into the Dwarf line, but Durthu just punching these guys initially, just get out of my house. So Durthu just up on the hill, just literally just monster mashing these Ushapti, and you can see that the Sword of Daith is going to be going down, lowering their armor by 30, making them that much weaker. So definitely some cool stuff going on. But the big issue here is, I think the front line is going to favor the Dwarves and the Wood Elves. I mean, they have Durthu, they have Wildwood Rangers, but actually these Wildwood Rangers taking a lot of damage, getting some Overwatch fire from these Blade Guards with the Starfire Shafts, and man, look at them get melted by those Wood Elf missiles. The Tomb Guard's coming in, and it looks like there's going to be an Earthblood, which actually does heal constructs, so that's definitely a very scary synergy. But in the meantime, Pharaoh of War landing some carrion in the back line. So now this is where things might get a little bit scary for the Dwarves and Wood Elves. You can see the Knights of Bretonnia just swarming into the back line. These Knight Errants are a great tool for chasing down Wood Elf archers. I mean, they have shields, and their low combat stats aren't really going to matter when they're fighting against Glade Guards and things like that. So the back line, every single one of these Wood Elf missile units is now pinned down by either Carrion or Knight Errants. And it looks like over here there's a bit of a pit fight. So the Grail Guardians are just trying to swarm Slayers. You can see these guys are going to be fighting the Tree Men, but they're not the anti-large variant. They're actually just kind of the anti-infantry variant. So the Tree Men is going to take no damage. The bolt throwers and everything else is still in pretty good shape. They're just shooting in there, but there is some heavy charging in the back line going as the Bretonnian wave of cav comes from the far side and is just crashing down in the back line. The frontline engagement is a little bit ugly right now. It's hard to tell what's going on. There's a Thane. It looks like he does have the Incantation of Desiccation, some debuffs and everything, but it actually looks like the Tomb Kings were able to crush the Dwarven forces here as well as the Wildwood Rangers. But what's going to be really, really hard for the Bretonnians as well as the Tomb Kings is taking out Durthu and these ancient treemen. All of the constructs and cav that you're seeing from Bretonnia and the Tomb Kings is going to be very heavily focused at killing infantry, just kind of that grindy war of attrition, but there's no anti-large here. So you can see Durthu and the Runesmith and the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass coming in, but the Bretonnian cav coming in to try and free up this Tomb Scorpion. But really, I think Durthu should be able to get this guy down. Looks like he's going to be engaging these Ushapti, actually. So in the back, the Knights of Bretonnia have gotten onto the artillery pieces. The bolt throwers right here, this one group shut down. It looks like this is a group of cannons who's probably going to go down shortly after. Treekin probably not going to be the best tool for kind of defending your back line, so I don't think they're going to be able to really stop these guys. You can see a lot of the Wood Elf missiles and everything are retreating. Bounce of Power is still dead even at this point. So the Glade Guards with Starfire Shafts are shut down. The Bretonnians and Tomb Kings have kind of claimed sovereignty over the back line here. They're just kind of, having their way with everything. You can see it's mostly Tomb King stuff here. The cannons are shut down by the Knight Errants. The Bretonnians are really swarming the Wood Elf troops in the back. But something to consider, guys. Even though it looks relatively bad, the Tomb Kings, they're not going to be able to deal with these Treekin. So there's Treekin here, they're here. Big Daddy Durthu is sitting with a Rune Lord who's going to be cycling those rune buffs and just keeping them all jacked. And you can see Setra the Imperishable, though, a great anti-large tool. So perhaps they were kind of counting on Setra with the fire damage. And Durthu is weak to fire, so on top of armor piercing and anti-large, Setra's popping the Blessed Blade, which is just going to do so much damage. And just look at Durthu get melted right here. So Setra and these Grail Guardians and all these troops are doing their best, but a nice Sword of Daith going down from the Gobbo King and Janet there. And also Janet does pull in some of his Slayers in the back. Definitely a very, very good kind of timing push right there. So it's going to just kind of devolve into a bit of a Death Star fight. In the back, you can see there's some Ushabti back here, and it looks like there are the Dragonback Slayers trying to clean things up, but all the cannons and Wood Elf troops and, yeah, like the bolt throwers and cannons and glade guards, like all of those are pretty much offline for now. So right now, it's just a Death Star fight, but Cetra the Imperishable is really tearing Durthu apart. He's in pretty good health. He has the support of some of these Grail Guardians and other troops like that, so it's really hard to tell. I mean, the Balance of Power is still dead even. This is anyone's game at this point. Ushabti over here fighting against the Runesmith and kind of the last pocket of Dwarf troops. It looks like there's some Slayers, the Grumbling Guard here, and they are fighting back-to-back with these Treekin, who I think over the course of this long game, they have I think Treekin have decent magic for this. Let's actually go ahead and check. So let's see if we can get in here and look. So 15%. So, the Grail Guardians who already kind of hit like wet noodles against Treekin are going to have that additional resistance because they do magic damage. So they're working their best trying to get those down. But Big Dirty Durthu, he's having some problems here. It looks like Cetra the Imperishable going in. Gets a really nice charge and a solid Master Rune coming down. But Cetra's AP is so good. He should be able to chip this guy down. One attack there doing about 300 damage. And the Knights of Bretonnia from Shetland Apache are going to be rushing in and going after Durthu. But despite this pick off of Durthu, the balance of power is going in the favor of the Dwarves and the Wood Elves from Gabo and Janet King. The Janet King. They're going in the favor of the Dwarves and the Wood Elves here, and it looks like Durthu's definitely going to go down. 158 HP, and, of course, Cetra's nearby, and all these cannons are just going to be swarming. But there's still a full health Rune Lord right here. Let's see what else. And a full Tree Man here, so this is going to be so hard to drag down. I mean, Cetra is able to do it, but Cetra's starting to get beat up himself. You can see he's at about 2,600 HP, and the mighty Durthu does fall. So the Knights of Bretonnia continuing to cycle charge, very well played by Shetland Apache, trying his best, but they're just kind of getting grinded down. You can see that there's some Wildwood Rangers, there's some Treekin, and they just don't have the stopping power. I really would have liked to have seen maybe a couple Grail Knights. I think their anti-large would have really helped them isolate these Treekin and kill them a little bit more efficiently. Could have helped against Durthu and the Ancient Tree Men, but they were committing very heavily to the infantry game. Probably expecting more infantry out of Dwarves, and also expecting more missiles out of the Wood Elves. But again, bringing the Tree Men and not really going too heavily into Wood Elf missiles, aside from like a couple of Glade Guards, I think threw a bit of a wrench in things. So if we fast forward here, you can see it's just kind of a grind right now. Cetra is just going to look for targets here, but the Tormentor Sword's locking them down. The Tree Man is just not able to be dragged down here, and the Dwarves and the Wood Elves are going to be resilient, and that's pretty much it. So that's the first game, and just a reminder, guys, excuse me, these are best of threes, so each round in this particular tournament is going to be a best of three. So that's just game one, so you guys got more games in store, and let's go ahead and take a look at the breakdown. So you can see, let's go through all the armies. So you can see Janet's here, Wildwood Rangers, the Tree Men really just, or Gabo's army. You can see the Tree Men really just heavily performing here, even though they didn't get a lot of kills. They just held things down. For Janet's army, Slayers were huge performers. I think the artillery didn't really do it, but the name of the game for Gabo and Janet was they're big guys. They're big guys, they're Thanes, the Rune Lord. Like, these guys just took so much effort from Shetland and Ferro to take down that I think they were able to win the day, but pretty cool armies for sure. And over here you can see Ferro did bring Cetra, who ended up being one of the saving graces of their build, but yeah, and he went very heavily with the Ushabti, probably expecting the Dwarves to be heavy in the infantry, but look at that. They only had maybe less than 2,000 gold worth of substantial infantry here, so that's some wild stuff. And Shetland just went hard in the paint. I like the Knight Errants as a pick against Wood Elves, and then the Grail Guardians, obviously a pretty grindy presence, but I don't know how I feel about them against the Dwarves. I feel like it's a little bit risky. So that's game one here. We're going to jump over to game two in this series, guys, so stay tuned, and we'll be back in a minute. All right, guys, so now we're back with game two in the series. So over here, we're going to have Shetland Apache and Ferro War with one of the nastiest builds I've ever seen, and I feel like this is going to be something we're going to see very heavily in this tournament. So it's Tomb Kings and Vampire Counts, and the cat, I guess the cat's out of the bag. I feel like everyone in this tournament was like, oh, I have some sort of a secret strategy that's really going to stomp over everyone. And this was, everyone has the same idea. It's very powerful, so you use the Tomb Kings. The Mortis Engine heals Constructs, it heals Tomb Kings infantry. On top of that, Invocation of Nehek from the Vampire Counts heals and resurrects Constructs. So you can get stupid massive value from Ushabti and pretty much all these type of units. So it's going to be a really nasty Death Star. I do think there is ample counterplay, but people may expect it now, but I think you really have to draw it out, pick them apart with ranged units, maybe counterplay with Ushabti Great Bows, and just spread out over the course of the map. Centaurs with throwing axes. But you can see Cryptors, Ushabti. Looks like there's double Corpse Carts in here. Ark in the Black with the Tomb Blade also is going to heal everything, including the Cryptors. And Heinrich Kemmler with his Tomb Blade. So just Team Tomb Blade over here. It's going to be going deep. And one group of Ushabti Great Bows. On top of that, Ferro and Shetland did also bring the Devils of Svarthofen and the Vargas here. Bit of an interesting pick, but they are okay at picking off Beastmen units. So it'll be cool to see them in action. So over here, we do have the Gabo King and Janet. So we do have the Beastmen as well as Bretonnia. So Beastmen bringing a front line of Goreherds, which I think is a little bit of a liability here. I don't think their shields are going to be particularly useful. And in this matchup, I guess you could face Skeleton Archers, but against Ushabti Great Bows, they're not going to shoot these. And they're also going to get buckled by Mortis Engine, terror-causing units. So a little bit risky in my opinion. On top of that, there are some Ungor Raiders. In the back, he does have Morgr and a Deathcaster. Grail Reliquary is going to be supporting the front, which, if he does get those in the front, it kind of counteracts some of the issues which I was articulating before. Gobbo King is going to be going heavy cap, so he has a couple of Questing Knights. I think in total he has 4, and then he has some Grail Guardians over here. He has and it looks like Janet does have some Minotaurs with Great Weapons, so a decent anti-large option. If they don't get mucked up in the Death Star and they're able to isolate some pertinent troops, they could do some heavy lifting for sure. On top of that, Janet has Centaurs with Great Weapons, some Poison Hounds, which is always a solid choice. But something else to note is this Death Star does have Tomb Guards with Halberds, so they're going to be able to defend really easily. So without further ado, guys, let's make it happen here. So the Ushabti Great Bows, it's definitely a good idea to bring one because it's going to kind of force your opponents to engage here. You have the range advantage, and the Death Star is going to be moving up. So man, this is just pure foulness, just marching forth. And Pharaoh of War, you know, he's just so bloodthirsty here. He's going to just be charging in, trying to get deep in these guys, and man, this is just going to be so brutal. I mean, it was funny, like, oh man, just talking to people about this strategy, it's pretty gross for sure. So it's going to be the one to beat in this tournament, I think. So the Ushabti coming in the front is going to be cleaving some of these guys. You can see some of that Ungor Raider fire coming, but you know they definitely need to be shooting that Mortis engine because it only has like a little bit of armor. Ushabti pushing in a little bit ahead of the Vampire counts, just getting bloodthirsty. Tomb Scorpion coming in, and you can see the Beastman front line is pretty much already starting to buckle. I mean, just taking a ton of damage from those Ushabti, and now on top of Ushabti, they got to deal with Cryptors, just bringing them to town and poisoning them and just monster mashing them, which is going to be crazy. Centaurs do come in the back. They might be able to get us around in this corpse cart, and it looks like Pharaoh of War did forget about Ark in the Black for a moment, which is going to be rough, and it looks like Gobbo King and Janet might be able to get a pick here, but Ark in the Black, he's deceivingly strong. He has 50 melee defense. Fade Abuna going down on the Centaurs, and the Vargheists can fly over and help, no problem. They have a 92 speed, so they'll get there pretty quick. So, in the front, you can see the Death Star fight has happened here. The Beastman front line is wavering and already pretty much dead. Heinrich Kemmler's Tombblade is active, and the Knights of Bretonnia are going to charge in to try and penetrate the defenses here. And you can see the Devils of Svartalfen. And these Cryptors are just fighting, and it's just such a grindy, brutal fight here. And you can already see the bounce power shift a little bit from its initial position. But look at this. Ark in the Black over here just using the Liber Mortis, and the Vargheists come in, and they're just going to start chewing on these guys. So Vargheists just monster mashing these Beastmen troops here on the far side. So Ark in the Black just cackling and, you know, taking it all the way to the blood bank here. So over here, the Tomb Guards with Halberds, a very, very good choice from Pharaoh of War because, again, one of the issues with the Death Star might be losing their chaff and letting their constructs get surrounded and whatnot. But the Tomb Guards with Halberds, very durable, high melee defense of 47, and they do have anti-large and armor piercing. So the Minotaurs try to get into the back, but honestly, they're just getting like picked off by these Halberds, and you can see the Devils coming in. And Minotaurs only have 35 armor, so even though they would do well against Vargheists in kind of an isolated environment, the Vargheists coming in with this just fat charge right here, 109 weapon strength right now with their Frenzy active and Undeath Resurgent, are going to tear these Minotaurs apart for sure, especially with the support of the Corpse Cart, which is going to buff their combat stats. 68 melee defense, 58 melee attack on this Death Star right here on these Vargheists, which is insane. So the bounce power is shifting right now, and you can see the Death Star is really not taking too much damage. The Beastmen troops are trying. There's a lot of like very tattered Knights of the Bretonnia. Minotaur's trying to find a home, but there's just not too many great targets that are accessible for them. So in the back, you can see Gobbo King trying his best to find an opportunity, and a very good play by Gobbo King and Janet, getting these Ushabti Great Bows. So the Questing Knights and some other troops are coming over. The Vargheists, the Devils are going to be helping out as well. So it ain't going to be free, that's for sure. And they can easily detach some troops here. You can see Ark in the Black in the back line is just kind of running around, probably looking for an opportunity to get a really good Tomb Blade. And if you were to pop it like right here, that would be really gross. The Knights continuing to charge in. You can see some of the zombies just kind of mucking them up, and a lot of guys are just kind of like standing around, like wondering what to do next. You can see the arrow fire coming in. It definitely needs to be focusing that Mortis engine down. This guy is just been sitting here, but I mean, even if they did it, there's so much healing. There's the Tomb Blade, there's Invocation, there's just like, and I wonder if the Realm of Souls heals your Vampire Count's allies. That's another thing that would be really, really just obscenely powerful. So you can see here at this point, the balance power is going to be shifting. The Death Star is continuing to fight, and the Minotaurs are just fighting and doing their best. Morker in here is fighting, and it just looks like they're not going to be able to get through this just slogfest. I mean, the balance of power is just kind of going, and it's only going to get worse with these Ushabti summons. You know, Janet and Gobbo getting some good rear charges on Graveguard might be able to crumble them down. You can see Peasants and Halberds coming up and around trying to engage her, but just look at this. Look at this monster mash. It's just like this gross blob of just beasts and Mortis engines and constructs, and it's so hard to penetrate that. Now, I think one of the better ways to beat this would be to use like Empire, for example. It could use a ton of Outriders, Dark Elves with Repeater Crossbows, and Soul Stealer kind of used in there would be a really good way. Like if you just went Empire with Outriders and Dark Riders with Repeater Crossbows and just kind of took isolated engagements and just like try and pick them off, I think that would probably be the way to do this. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what people come up with counterplays, because there's probably going to be, you know, you're going to be seeing this build quite a bit in this tournament. So over here, you can see Morker the Shadow Gave. It's going to be just kind of fighting in the pits here. He's pretty much surrounded at this point, and I think that's going to be all she wrote. The Beastmen forces are just shattering, And if I remember correctly, it's just a couple of Bretonnian peasants just kind of fighting on a Grail Reliquary. So the blob moves forth. I mean, Mortis Engine's in perfect health. Corpse Hearts are in great health. The Devils are, relatively, everything's getting pretty close to its healing cap here. The one thing that took some damage were some Cryptors, who are still at 11 models right here. Tomb Scorpions, who shopped here, all sitting pretty here. They did a good job getting down the Great Bows, but really, I just don't think it's gonna be enough at this point. And this is kind of the last bastion of Bretonnia. You can see some of these Grail Guardians and Men-at-Arms with polearms, and the Fey Enchantress sitting over here. And Fey Enchantress with her draining effect and melee attack debuff might be a good kind of counter Death Star. I wonder how you could play that out. And like if you got like a really big Dwellers below, like on top of that blob, I think that could do pretty well. Like Dwellers below plus like a Soul Stealer, or Dwellers plus like a Final Transmutation, like might be able to Alpha Strike them before they can really come back. It'll be interesting to see. So that's going to be game 2, guys. So this is going to be a rubber match. It's going to be the 3rd match in the series, and I can't remember the races off the top of my head. But we're going to go ahead and take a quick look at the breakdown here, and then from there we can go over to game 3. So you can see Janet had these maybe a little bit, I think some Centaurs with throwing axes would have been essential, because they could have kept out of range of the Death Star and picked off like some armored constructs. Granted, they could have counter healed, but I don't know. It's hard to say. So so you can see the armies here. Gobbo brought Questing Knights for some AP, and Janet had some Minotaurs with great weapons and some Ungors and stuff. But this is a nasty Death Star. Some Kindred Kemmler with the Tomb Blade. It's going to be resurrecting units, and then Mortis Engine heals, Invocation plus Arkan's Tomb Blade. It's pretty hog wild. So well played to all players in the second match in the King of the Tomb Invitational, or I guess second game in the first round here. And we're going to jump over to game 3. So thanks again, guys, and see you soon. And now we are here with the 3rd and final match in the showdown between Team Cycle Charge, who's going to be playing the Tomb Kings and the Bretonnians. We're going to be facing off against Team Janet and Gobbo as the Warriors of Chaos and the Empire. So this is actually something I wanted to really show you guys before the battle got started. So you can see that Team Cycle Charge over here, deployed over in the forest. Everything is hidden and blobbed up, and when I was watching this in spectator mode, I had no idea what was going on. I was like, are they drunk? Is there some sort of shenanigans going on? And I mean, because on paper, like, if they stayed in this formation and the Hammer of the Witches and this great cannon shot into here, it would be a ton of casualties. But regardless, they're all hidden, so they should be relatively safe. It looks like they were very careful about that. But what they were doing is the Ferrous Scroll of Mighty Incantations. So this is an item, I didn't even know this existed. I just, no idea. So what it does is, based on like units nearby, and if you have like a big blob near you, the effects of the scroll, its power is essentially increased based on how many units are nearby. So if you have like a huge horde of just like Bretonnian peasants and archers and spearmen and just all this stuff, you're going to get an insane Winds of Magic recharge rate. I think it goes to like 1 per 1, and it's very powerful. So what they're doing here is they're just blobbing up using this, and I think after the game they told me that they were getting like 1 per 1. They just got like a full Winds of Magic tank after like a matter of seconds, which was really, really neat. So cool strategy there. But since they're so blobbed up, let's go ahead and take a look over here at the Empire and Chaos. So Chaos, obviously going to be handling the infantry corps, so Forsaken in the front line, are really going to monster mash Bretonnian and Tomb King infantry, which I thought was a great pick from Janet and Gobbo. On top of that, Sigmar Sons and Tattersoul, so just some unbreakable troops that are pretty good in their own right. In the secondary line, it looks like there's going to be some Chosen with Halberds, a pretty solid pick, just in case there's big constructs or, Grail Knights or Grail Guardians kind of pushing in the back line, so I like that pick quite a bit from Janet and Gobbo. A Fire Sorcerer with Flaming Sword of Ruin and Cascading Fire Cloak, Hammer the Witches. So there's going to be a little hidden synergy there. So whenever he casts a fire spell, it's going to make things weaker to fire. Hammer the Witches does hit with fire damage, if I'm not mistaken. Let's go ahead and check. I think it does. Oh, maybe actually it doesn't. Could have sworn it used to, but I guess I was wrong there. Okay, so just totally wrong. We do have the Handgunners and the Silver Bullets back here, and it looks like Kolek is going to have his Dragon Ogre Goon Squad. So this is pretty scary. So as you guys know, Kolek's one of like the biggest world beaters. And if he has Lore of Life, like just imagine Chaos with Lore of Life. So he's going to be using the Jade Wizard most likely to heal up Kolek, which is going to be really scary. So any focus fire on Kolek is going to, you're going to need a lot more to bring him down. So I like that quite a bit. And for the Empire leadership, it looks like we do have Karl Franz, and he's going to be riding dirty with the Royal Eldorf Griffites. So without further ado, guys, let's get this show on the road. For the Tomb Kings and Bretonnians and Team Cycle Charge, it looks like they have Mounted Yeoman over here, which I actually like. Mounted Yeoman is kind of like something you wouldn't expect, and they can pick off Dragon Ogres who only have 40 armor. I mean, it will take some time, but he's definitely kind of a niche little pick there. That's pretty cool. And you can see the forces of Team Cycle Charge are going to be pouring from the forest, and the scroll wore off, but in that time, they got a ton of Winds of Magic, so they're undoubtedly full at this point, which is pretty cool. And I wonder if it affects both players. That's something something I'd have to look at. So mostly Tomb Guard in the front line. There's actually 4 Ushabti Great Bows. So there's one here, and it looks like there's 2 more back here, as well as the Blessed Legion of Fok, their demonetization, as we like to call them. Some Questing Knights, but it looks like mostly a peasant army. Men-at-Arms with polearms, going to be doing the armor piercing against the big monsters, but Chaos didn't bring too much monster mash, just Dragon Ogres and Kolek, really. So the cannons are shooting in from Janet and Gobbo, getting some great contact here on the Ushabti Great Bows, and it looks like that Hammer of the Witch is really just kind of driving it home. But the Bretonnians have a very heavy skirmish force. So the mounted yeomen are coming around trying to get some free harass on these Forsaken here, but they are fended off by the silver bullets. So the silver bullets have 150 range compared to their 125, so it's going to be a little bit risky. Granted, I think they could have committed all 4 of these mounted yeomen to focusing down the silver bullets, and probably could have crumbled them. I don't know, it's hard to say though. The mounted yeomen don't seem terribly accurate. So the main forces are underway. The Ushabti Grapos are shooting in, and it looks like he's trying to take out the cannons in the back. So he's going for the Great Cannons and the Hammer of the Witches here. You can see the crews are going to be taking some heavy fire. But personally, I think the Ushabti Grapos should be focusing down like the infantry and maybe some of the Dragon Ogres, because basically what's going to happen, these forces are going to push forward. The Empire and Chaos are just going to march forward here, and the Dragon Ogres, sorry, I had to readjust my seat there. The Dragon Ogres and all these guys are going to pressure the Grapos back, and at that point, like, they're probably going to switch targets onto something else. So the damage they did do to the cannons and the Hammer of the Witches, it's going to be kind of useless at that point. They might kill like one model, but it does take some time to do that. Regardless, the forces are getting pushed. You can see the Flagellants and all the Forsaken are pushing forward, and it looks a little bit scary because the Bretonnian Tomb King front line is still kind of making its way up from the forest. They're a little bit out of position. There are some foot squires here to defend, but I feel like these Forsaken are just going to bum rush and just cut through the seam here just like butter. So in the front, the Ushabti here are going to be pulling back behind the halberds. Definitely a good idea because Kolek has a fat chub, and he's just on the hunt for those guys. And the fighting's underway. So you can see the Blessed Legion of Demonetization is shooting into the Tattersouls here on the far side. The mounted yeomen archers are positioned here. You know, they have a good opportunity to get in there. And it looks like over here, the Hammer of the Witches did get attacked by some mounted yeomen, so I just think a regular group. So very well played right there, kind of temporarily shutting that down. But you can see Janet and Gabo are able to use their Dragon Ogres to counter that play pretty easily. Also over here, another good play, getting some Chaos Poison Warhounds on mounted yeomen who have pretty terrible combat stats. So the Hounds will probably be able to push off one group. They might lose. Maybe they'll get both. Man, those Hounds generating some massive value. Because those mounted yeomen, like charging into these bullets back here and all that other stuff, could have been so good. So the main fight is underway. You can see the Blob, the Tomb Guard, and other troops are fighting against these state troops. Yeah, I think there's some Sigmar Sons and stuff in here, but it's kind of hard to tell. The bounce power is relatively even, but this is going to be really bad. So the Forsaken just came in here and monster mashed this flank, and now the Chosen are pouring through. Karl Franz and the Royal Altar of Griffites just got on and just wrecked these foot squires. I mean, they're just getting pounded, and the Forsaken chasing those foot squires off as well. So this entire flank just buckled to heavy chaos pressure and heavy empire pressure. And Kolek is, you know, taking some focus fire, but he has the Flaming Sword of Ruin and Star Crusher, 736 weapon strength. He's just going to be just monster mashing all over these Ushabti. You can see he takes out a model and a ton of HP off another one most likely. And it looks like the Tomb Kings and the Bretonnians from Team Cyclo Charge are kind of getting crowded a little bit. Something that is good, though, you can see Pharaoh of War and Shetland have formed a bit of a battle line, so the Ushabti Grapos and the Blessed Legion are shooting in on Kolek, but, you know, normally that's, like, netting a lot of value, but as soon as you see, like, Lore of Life go off on Kolek, it's going to be scary, and there it is, a Cascading Fire Cloak, I think, and it looks like there's an Earthblood, which is going to be healing him up, which is so brutal, because so many resources are being dumped into killing Kolek right here. In the back, it looks like there's some harass going on from the mounted yeomen, but they've been cleaned up mostly by some of these these Chaos Poison Warhounds, so definitely a very cool synergy, kind of using these hounds as a backline sweeper tool to counter harass, and it looks like the cannons are back online. So if we look, there's two cannons are online here, and the other one took some Ushabti Grapo fire, and they have all 3 cannons. So that's going to be real bad, because even if, you know, they were to somehow win this frontline engagement versus the, you know, Chaos and Empire troops, the Ushabti Grapos are still going to be taking cannon fire. So over here, Karl Franz, it looks like he was able to just smash the Fey Enchantress, so she just got taken to Pound Town over here by the Chosen and Karl Franz. You had Galmaraz and the Dragon Ogres are sweeping around the flank. So this is kind of the last vestige of Team Cyclo Charge's like infantry corps right here, and this whole back line is just ripe for the taking. You can see High Queen Khalida, I think she was trying to duel Kolek for a while, and she just took some massive beatings. There's hounds in here, and I think that's going to be a little bit too much for them. The forces of Bretonnia here, let's see how they're doing. So they're kind of pushing forward and doing their thing a little bit. But Kolek is just, you know, he's taking that fire like a champ, and this back line is about to be compromised so incredibly hard. As far as the 2 cannons, I'm not sure where they're shooting, but it's a little bit of a madhouse here. So Dragon Ogres are going to be pushing back into the Chosen of the Gods and the Ushabti. It looks like the Demogryph Knights are in full health here, so Team Janet and Gabo just swooping in on this back line. But the bounce power did come back towards the middle a little bit, so it looked like Pharaoh and Team Cyclo Charge with the Bretonnians and the Tomb Kings were able to make some plays somewhere on the battlefield that kind of tilted that back in, but really, I don't think they're going to be able to handle Kolek with all those heals. And on top of that, the Royal Altar of Griffites. Granted, there is a somewhat healthy Bretonnian blob here that has a Grail Reliquary and a bunch of halberds, with, you know, Tomb Guards with halberds, so that's going to be scary. A nice little vortex going down right there. Not vortex, but kind of the AoE explosion from the High Queen Khalida. I don't know why that was a tongue twister for me. But the bounce power is starting to go even more in the favor of Team Janet and Gabo. You can see in the back the Royal Altar of Griffites are just all over the Chosen of the Gods. Kolek is getting the Cascading Fire Cloak, and he's probably going to get another regrowth. But it looks like Team Cyclo Charge does summon the Ushabti here. Now, they're not designed against, you know, fighting large entity models, but they have good enough armor piercing that if they do hit Kolek, they can at least get through the 100 armor relatively effectively. So looks like some skeleton spearmen being sent back here to kind of help against the Zentler's Reichsguard and some other troops, but this definitely is going to spell some doom back here. You can see the silver bullets are online, the cannons are online, so there's just going to be a ton of firepower coming in, just melting those Ushabti. High Queen Kalita, you know, doing her best to kind of assassinate this Jade Wizard right here, so she's surfing on her snake, and the Wizard probably getting a heal off on Kolek, I would imagine. Yeah, looks like Star Crusher plus Regrowth. That's so brutal. And High Queen Kalita, a very, very good assassin. I mean, a strong duelist in her own right, but this gunpowder squad, I mean, there's handgunners sitting right here. If they decide to turn and shoot at High Queen Kalita, she's just going to get put in the, you know, the snake pits right now. So here comes the firepower. The double cannons focusing in. So obviously Gabo and Janet communicating there that she's an open target. And man, she just got taken out to pasture for sure. So that's pretty rough for the High Queen. So at this point, Kolek is going to be cleaning up. I mean, there are some tattered forces, some yeomen, and a bit of a blob here, but Karl Franz is in good health. And I mean, Kolek's here, there's cannons, there's everything else. So it looks like they're just going to get smashed with army losses. So there concludes the first round of the first round in our tournament. So this is actually probably going to be the first replay going up. So I'll make sure to put a link to the brackets and everything so you guys can see. But Team Janet and Gabo do advance out of the first round, so they're going to be going to the semifinals and the showdown. And I definitely liked their. I liked seeing Chaos Infantry just kind of compensate, because Empire has like good utility. They have good guns, cannons. They have some really cool cav units. And seeing like the Chaos Infantry just like covering them and just like being elite and grindy was super cool. Seeing that in tandem with the Empire. So I like their synergy quite a bit from the Gabo King and Janet here, and getting to see the old boy Karl. And you know, one of the weaknesses of Karl Franz is that he's very susceptible to focus fire, but with the big juicy Kolek on the battlefield, I feel like nobody's going to like look at Karl. So he was able to go around and he assassinated the Enchantress. He was able to do a ton of work for sure. And of course, you know, Janet's Forsaken, and you know, all these guys really just kind of grinded that out in the front line. So that's pretty cool. I loved that tactic from Pharaoh of War in Shetland, kind of having that scroll over there in the forest and getting that massive winds of magic. That was really cool. And that basically allowed them to have the Fate of Buna very early on. And I think they like got multiple casts off. So I think they were doing that on the Chosen or maybe on Forsaken, I'm not sure. But I think what really cost them the game was when their front line got compromised on that western flank, it was just too much, because there was Forsaken pouring into the back line, just messing things up. And I think had they been able to kind of sustain their front line, I mean, it was still kind of a close battle. Like, if the Enchantress had avoided assassination and they had been able to seal that western front with a little bit more manpower, I think that could have been, you know, a closer game for sure. Not to say it already wasn't, but I think those were some of the determining factors. So very well played to Janet on occasion, the Gabo King, Shetland Apache, and Pharaoh of War. So Team Janet and Gabo winning the series 2-1. So make sure to check out the brackets in the comment section below. You guys will be able to see the current standings and all that kind of fun stuff, and, you know, kind of theory craft on who might be taking the next rounds. So thanks again. Make sure to check out all these guys' channels. Of course, there will be links to their channels. You know, Gabo King and Janet. Shetland Apache is a gentleman who runs all those big tournaments, and Pharaoh of War, of course, has a channel as well. So thanks again for watching, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed, and we'll see you guys next time. Take care.